American English with Linda, and we're going to be talking about which past verb form to use. It's in the past, but sometimes for the verb speak, for instance, we might say spoke, or have spoken, or had spoken. When do we use each one of those? I, you, we, or they spoke if it's at a specific time or times in the past. I drew a timeline here. There's now, but then we're looking back to a time or maybe another time. It happened here, and it happened here. It happened 2 different times or 3 different times, but we're thinking about those times. I spoke at the meeting yesterday. You spoke for an hour to the doctor. We spoke on the phone last week. They spoke candidly, that means truthfully, about their problems. They may have done that more than once, but we know the times, or we think we know the exact times that happened. For he or she or it's also spoke, but I made it on a different slide so you could have bigger letters. The timeline is still the same. It's before now at a specific time. I'm thinking about the time. I may not say it, but I'm thinking about it. Tom, that's a he, spoke quietly during dinner. Amy, that's a she, spoke privately to her supervisor. Well, she may have spoken more than once, but it was at a particular time that she knows and a particular other time that she knows. Or the document, that would be an it, spoke, it means it was included in it, spoke clearly about our responsibilities. Now we go to have spoken. It is different when we go to he, she, or it. So here's I, or you, or we, or they have spoken. Now notice on my timeline, there's a long line, not a dot. Because all I know is it's before now. That's all I'm telling you. It was before now. I have spoken to large crowds. Was it yesterday? Was it last year? Was it many times? All I'm telling you is just before now. I have spoken, so it's a stretched out time. You have spoken about your friend often. You have a friend. I haven't met the friend maybe, but you talk about the friend many times. We have spoken on the phone, and I could include many times. We have spoken on the phone. I'm not referring to when, which time, just it happened sometime before now. They have spoken politely when passing on the street. When they go by each other on the street, they say hello or how are you. They're very polite, and it happens over and over a long period of time. I could say they spoke politely when passing on the street, but it sounds like they only passed once or twice. But if I say they have spoken politely, it sounds like it happened many times over a long period of time, and we don't really care when, just before now. And then for he or she or it, we have to use has spoken sometime or sometimes before now. I didn't put the dots in there, you get the idea. Our supervisor, he has spoken to all the new employees. Now, sometime before now, it doesn't matter. Carol, that's a she, has spoken to the police about the crime. Maybe many times, maybe once, it doesn't matter. It just happened before now. It's already happened. We don't need to check on that again. The law, it has spoken about civil rights in several bills. Those are documents that are included in the government and become a law. So it's been addressed, it's been spoken about many times. Now for had spoken, it gets a little complicated. It can be I, you, we, they, he, she, it doesn't matter. Had spoken. it's sometime before another earlier time. And then we have event 1, event 2, and now. So I had spoken about safety before the accident. The event happened. I spoke about safety. Then the accident happened. They're both in the past. But the one that was had happened first. I had spoken about safety before the accident. You had spoken, and many times we put already in there. You had spoken already about your friend before I met him. You had spoken about your friend, I met him. The spoken came first, and then the meeting. So spoken gets the had. We had spoken on the phone before we met in person. We had already talked, and then we met. We spoke, and then we met. So the first past gets had. They had spoken kindly to each other, but then they started arguing. Now I put a dot as well as an arrow because sometimes the thing that happens, one of the two may be a specific time. For instance, I had spoken about safety, maybe a long line, but the accident is definitely one time. And then the second one, you had spoken about your friend, that probably happened over a long period of time, but I met the person once. He had spoken on the phone before we had spoken on the phone before we met in person. So same thing, we were talking on the phone, maybe many times, but we met the person, that's once. So in those situations, an arrow for the first event, a dot for the second event, but they're both in the past. But they had spoken kindly to each other. That may have been a line, a long time, but it may have just been once. They had spoken kindly to each other. But then they started arguing, and that sounds like it might be going on for a while. They're arguing and arguing and arguing. So the start was at once, but then the argument may have kept going. I could have said, but then they argued for a long time. You could also say it that way. But the first event on the last sentence was speaking kindly to each other. The second event was arguing. The first one gets the had. And with he or she or it, it still had, but I gave you some more space, so we put it on a different slide. The teacher, this is a he, had spoken about not cheating before the test began. He had spoken about not cheating, maybe over a long period of time, or maybe just once. Before the test began, that's just once. But the speaking about cheating came before the test. So the spoken had goes with spoken. Pam, that's a she, had spoken with her mother before she visited her in the hospital. She had spoken to her mother, and then she went to the hospital to visit her mother. So the spoken came before the visit. Spoken gets had. The forecast, that means telling what the weather will be, maybe. The forecast, it had spoken already about bad weather when the storm hit. The speaking about bad weather came first. The bad weather storm came, so the speaking about it comes first. Now let's look at some more examples of just how other verbs do that. Drive. I, or you, or we, or they, or he, or she, or it drove slowly. I, or you, or we, or they have driven too fast. That probably happened many times over a long period of time. You're driving too fast, you're driving too fast. He or she or it has driven through 6 states. I'm looking back. They're driving through 6 states is over a long period of time. You could say I drove through 6 states or he drove through 6 states, and it still makes sense because it's one drive. But since you're going through each state individually, it's also okay to say he, she, or it has driven through 6 states. Maybe the it is the bus that you are riding on. I, or you, or we, or they, or he, or she, or it had driven for 3 hours before stopping for lunch. They drove for 3 hours, they stopped for lunch, and then we moved to now. Both of those things have already happened. We drove for 3 hours. We stopped for lunch. We changed drove to had driven because that happened first. If you make it 2 different sentences, you don't have to worry about that. But if you make it all one sentence, I had driven for 3 hours before stopping for lunch. The driving for 3 hours has already ended, and then we had lunch. Let's look at the verb choose. I, or you, or we, or they, or he, or she, or it chose wisely. I don't know what they chose, but it was wise. I, or you, or we, or they have chosen the right answer. Yay. He or she or it has chosen the best one. Maybe it was the best orange or the best watermelon. They have chosen the best one. He has chosen the best one. Now with had, it doesn't matter what the subject is. I, you, we, they, he, she, or it had chosen to move before the rent went up. Now we go back, the rent went up, but even earlier, we moved to another place. We had chosen to move before the rent went up. Now here's a regular verb. I wanted to show you one of those. Regular verbs have ed at the end. Sometimes you have to double a consonant, and the pronunciation varies depending on whether it's a voiced ending of the verb or an unvoiced ending, or whether it sounds too much like D to be separated like a T doesn't. You have to say not a T, but another D. You would have to say dead, but most of the time you don't. I, you, we, they, he, she, it walked upstairs. I, you, we, they have walked for miles somewhere before now, or sometime before now. He or she or it has walked on this path before. I don't know exactly when, but sometime before now, he has walked on this path. I or you or we or they or he or she or it had walked into the forest before the rain started. Now, if I don't include the rain, I would say I have walked into the forest. If I include the rain, I had walked into the forest before the rain started. It gives the idea of separating the time from now. Let's look at a quick conversation on the phone. Jerry says, I fell down the stairs. That's just the past, the fall. Laura says, have you called an ambulance before now? Have you called? Jerry says, my friend has called before now. 1. He had already called one before I found my phone. When I fell, I dropped the phone. I don't know where it is. My friend called the ambulance, and then I found my phone. And then one more conversation. Robert says, I lost my keys. Laura says, have you searched your apartment and your car? Have you searched sometime before now? Jerry says, my brother has searched the apartment. I had looked in the car before he checked the apartment. So Jerry looked in the car, and then his brother looked in the apartment. So I had looked, said Jerry, in the car before he checked the apartment. So there's where you get your had. I hope that helps, and we'll try to find those in other conversations in the future. See you next time.